Okay. In Module 8, what we're going to talk about is using Excel to build an application. Okay, an application, as you guys know, apps are things that, pieces of software that do something. You have apps on your phone that, I don't know, allows you to Snapchat someone, okay, or post a Vine. Okay, those are applications. Well, even though Excel isn't an application programming development interface, it allows us to build pretty simple applications like things like we're going to build an invoice. Okay, so someone can enter data, it's going to do some calculations, and it's going to format an invoice that we can print. Okay, it can be used for very simple applications, and the kind of tools we're going to use for that are some of the tools that we use in programming classes. Like we're going to define names. Instead of calling a cell B10, we're going to call it cost. Instead of calling a range of cells A2 through B4, it's going to be called table. We're also going to discover something called macros. Macros can be very useful in diminishing time to take tasks because it allows you to record some actions. Like say you have to do an action, 50 times. Well, instead of doing it 50 times, you say, let's record it once and then do the macro 50 times. Just hit this button or enact this macro 50 times. So we'll go over those kind of things. So that's what Module 8 is all about. What I want you to do then to start is let's go into Module 8 data files and go down into tutorial. And the worksheet that we want to look at is theater.xlsx. And as you always do, please put in your name and the date. Okay, so what this application, you guys were able to bring this up. Okay, this is just a spreadsheet, a workbook, a couple with three worksheets in it. But what it's going to allow us to do is we could hand this off to someone, and they could enter in invoice data. Okay, we have a table in here, a predefined table for how much tickets are, and it would create an invoice that could be printed. Could be used, and further you'll see on the next tab, ticket data. We could actually keep it in a listing. It's going to be like a file of all the tickets that we've sold. Okay, so basically a very simple application. But before we start, realizing that we may develop this and it may be debugged a different time, we're going to define some names for some of these fields. So what I want you to do, we're going to do quite a few of these, but I want you to go to cell B24. Okay, go to cell B24, which is right here. Has a 10 in it right now, the handling cost. And if you look up in the name box, it says B24. Okay, we don't want B24 isn't a good name. It's not a good nickname even. So what we'd like to do is give it a more descriptive name that we can use. Now I'm going to go click up in the name box. It should highlight B24. And I'm going to change B24 to handling cost. And I'm going to hit enter. Now if I click on B24, it is known as B24, but its alias, and we call this a defined name. Its defined name is handling cost. Now when I do these defined names, a few rules associated with them. I don't think you can use special characters like ampersands and percent symbols. There can't be spaces in them. So a lot of times, instead of using spaces, we use like caps, like uppercase and lowercase, or sometimes they use dashes or underscores, you know, to indicate that there's a space. So we called B24 handling costs. Let's do a couple others. Let's do B25. So click on that, and we're going to call that up here parking fee. Now, not only can we do a cell, we can also do ranges of cells and give those names. For example, it looks like this table of tickets up here that I'm going to use later to determine the price is something that we're going to treat as one thing. Okay, it makes sense to treat as one thing. So I'm going to call all those cells, instead of saying, you know, A part of the table or B part, I'm going to select the whole range and give the whole range a name. So what I want to do is highlight A16 through C21. Now up in the name box it just shows A16, but please note that I have A16 through C21 selected. And I'm going to type in the name box, I'm going to call that ticket prices. And hit enter. Now you'll notice if I click on any cells in that range, the cells are still named their given name, but if I highlight the whole area, the exact area again, select A16 to C21, it says, oh, okay, this whole area is known as ticket prices. Let's go to the transfer area. This is F25 through J25. And let's call that transfer area. Okay, and this transfer area is what we're going to use after we build an invoice to transfer it over to a file that we can have for historical purposes. Like we sold this ticket for this amount. So we're just going to leave it alone for there for now. Okay, we're all good? Okay, let's go to J18. Okay, J18. And we're going to call that ticket. Whoops, I shouldn't do it in here, right? Up in the name box, call it ticket cost. And then J22, I want to call total invoice. Okay, now a couple things. As I create these defined names, it's building a listing of all the defined names I have for this worksheet. So if I want to see those defined names, up here under our name box, there's a drop down. If we click on that drop down, you'll see it has all the defined names that we've created so far. So if we go to ticket cost, it'll take us to the ticket cost cell. If we go to, I don't know, parking fee, it'll take our route to the parking fee. So you know, imagine you have a real complex spreadsheet with hundreds and hundreds of fields. This can be quite useful. Now, one of the things that is kind of cumbersome is we defined, 5 or 6 names there, and it took us, I don't know, too long to do. We also want to define all this invoice data at once. Okay, so we have this is a donation, this is number of parking details, this is the location, all those things. Well, oftentimes in the application, for the visual appearance for the person using it, we also have a name, a label associated with the cell, yes? So a lot of times it makes sense to give this a defined name of the label. So this is the label donation. Let's call this cell donation. So what I'm saying is, let's try to do this all at once, okay? There's a method to do that. So what I want you to do is I want you to select, and we're going to do that for these, I want you to select A3 through B12. Okay, A3 through B12. And it should say 10 rows by 2 columns, okay? 10 rows by 2 columns. Don't go over to column C. Okay. Now this is under, and this, we haven't used this a whole lot, but under formulas, okay? Under formulas, once again, we're working with defined names. There is a grouping called defined names, since we're working with defined names. And in there, okay, there is an option that says create from selection. So we're going to create defined names from the existing selection, the selection we just made. So click on create from selection. And it says create names from values in the top row or left column. Well, in this case, and usually it is the top row or left column. Usually it is something like that because we have the labels up above, a lot of times on the left-hand side. In this case, where are our labels in this selection? They're in the left row, right? Or left column. So I'm going to uncheck. Okay, I'm going to uncheck top row because really no benefit there. Leave left column checked and click OK. Now hopefully you'll see it gave all those cells, like B2 or B3 is now known as invoice date. B4 is known as subscriber, B5 is address, blah, blah, blah. And you see what it did? It doesn't like spaces, so what did it do? Instead of using spaces, it used underscores where the spaces was for the labels, okay? So that is nice. We can do a whole bunch of these things at one time. Now also in that group, okay, there is something called the name manager. And as the name manager name suggests, it allows us to edit these things. Okay, these are where all the defined names are. So it allows us to change them, edit them however we see fit. The one I have in here that's kind of ugly is no parking decals. I think it is no parking decals, which is number of parking decals. So let's simplify that. Let's edit that name to something more simplistic, just for the purposes of being more simplistic and to show you how to edit things. So highlight that, click on Edit, and let's change. You see this is referencing B11 in the invoice worksheet. Let's just change the name of it to decals and click OK. We can also add defined names in this area. We can also delete. I believe the tutorial wants us to delete the transfer area. So transfer area, click on that. And we're deleting the defined name. We're not deleting the transfer area. We're just deleting the name, the alias that was given to that group of cells. Let's click Close. Okay, now what happens from time to time is, we have a big worksheet here, and we have all these defined names that we define. So we said this is equal to this cell, this is equal to this cell. Well, someone that does this professionally, a big important part of doing something professionally is not to just get it done, but it's something that's useful and documentable and can be reused by a coworker or a colleague. So we're going to go over to the documentation tab, okay? And we haven't done a whole lot in the documentation tab so far with these worksheets, except for put our name and date in there. But companies often have, documentation tabs, and they have specific things that they have. This spreadsheet is used for this, and they have, different methods in there, and maybe the process that's used. Well, one of the things that sometimes goes into this is the defined names that are apart, almost like a dictionary. So let's go down to A10. Let's just put a label, defined names, and then go down to A11. Okay, and up here once again under formulas, in the defined names area, you see use in formula. Okay. In the very bottom in this drop down, it says paste names, and then we want to paste the whole list. Okay. And this didn't do anything except gave me documentation. It says, hey, the name ticket cost is equal to invoice worksheet cell J18. Series is equal to invoice worksheet cell B9. Okay. Now, if I change anything, this doesn't automatically refresh, so I'd have to recopy it, right? If I change anything, or I'd have to go over there and update it. Now, this is just like static text. Okay, so something that may make your application a little bit more professional. Okay. Let's go back to working in our worksheet. Okay, the whole deal with this is the left-hand side, the top part, is where the person that takes the ticket information enters it in, and then we take it, we reformat it using the ticket prices and the handling costs and the shipping costs, and we prepare an invoice that can be printed. Okay, so this is all for data entry, and this is going to be all for output. Okay, so we want to bring over some of the fields from the data entry area into the invoice area. So the first thing we want to do is go to cell J7, and I want to bring the date over from the invoice date. So I'm just going to say equal B3. Okay, and it's going to bring over July 15th, 2013. I'm going to go to cell G9 now, and I'm going to put in equal B4 to bring in our subscriber, which is Michael Keller. And in cell G10, I'm going to put in equal B5 to bring in the address. Now that's nice. Okay, it works. It's probably not the best. When we have defined names, we've created something that is user-friendly for us, better than B10, B7. Why not use those things? So I want to bring over city, state, zip, and I know that information is in B, looks like B6, so I could put in here equal B6 and be good to go. But instead of doing that, I'm going to put in the equal sign, and then I'm going to put in a letter C. Okay? And what it does, Excel, being intuitive, being, hey, what are you trying to do here, John? It puts up a whole bunch of functions. You see the little gray ones, those are functions. I don't want to do any chi-squares or anything like that at this point. But I do want to use that defined name, and you see it there called city, state, zip, right? I do want to use that. So, God bless you. So I'm going to go down to city, state, zip. Whoops. I'm going to go down to city, state, zip, and then tab, and hit enter. And now it's bringing city, state, zip over there. If I'd have put in there, say equal B6, it would have done the same thing, okay? It would have done the same thing. But I can use these names and formulas instead of using the reference. We can also do that in a point and click. If I type in equal for phone and then click on cell B7, it says, hey, that's known as phone. Great, shows phone in there for me. I hit enter, I'm good. Let's see, in cell I14, where are we at, I14? I'm going to put ticket quantity, so I'm going to say equal, and then looks like B8 is ticket quantity. In cell I15, I want the series, so I'm going to put in equal. I'm going to click on B9. It's going to say equal series. For the location, I'm going to put equal. Then we'll click on B10, and it's going to throw the location in there. Okay, so now this is kind of going back to Module 7. This is what we need to do. We need to define the cost of this ticket. Okay, so the ticket price table over here determines the cost of the ticket. The series of it, and if it's an orchestra seat or a balcony seat, are the two things that drive the ticket cost. So I want you to help me think about how I'm going to put in the correct ticket cost. How am I going to do that evaluation? There's actually two tools that I'm going to use to do that. What do I need to evaluate? Okay, you're right. I'm going to use VLOOKUP, right? The series is going to tell me what part of this table to look up. If it's A, it's going to be, orchestra, it's going to be 225 or 175. If it's B, it's going to be 200 or 165. But it's not a straight lookup, right? It's not a straight lookup because sometimes I'm going to use the second column from the table, right? And sometimes I'm going to use the third column from the table, depending on if it says balcony or orchestra. How do I do a branch like that when there's two conditions? What is the conditional I use for that? If. Okay, so we're going to combine if with VLOOKUP. Okay, and here's how it's going to run. I'm going to say equal if, and what do I want to evaluate? What do I want to evaluate here? What am I evaluating? If what?
Location is orchestra.
Okay. So I'm going to say if equal, if L, and I have location. Okay, I could have said B10 there, but I'm saying if the location is equal to orchestra. Okay. I want to do a VLOOKUP, okay? So the VLOOKUP I'm going to use, I'm going to type in VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP. What value am I going to use to look up? What is the thing that drives the lookup? The table is what I'm going to look up in, but what is the key to that table that's going to drive, hey, where I stop in that table? The series, right? So I'm going to put in here, it's already defined name, is it not? Series. So I'll type SE. Oh, I don't need even that. I can find the series and tab over. So I'm going to look up the series. In what table? Where's the table at? Very good. Okay, it is from A16 to I think it was C21, but we also know that better as ticket prices. So we're going to type in ticket prices. There it is. Comma. If it's orchestra, and that's the part of the if that I'm in, right? I'm in if it's orchestra, I want it to return what part of the table? What column from the table? The second column, right? So I'm going to put a 2 here. And because it's an exact match, I'm going to write false. And I'm going to end my VLOOKUP with an end parenthesis. You guys with me? Yes? Okay. Now, I'm going to put a comma. And if I'm here, that means it was not equal to orchestra. And since I can only have 2 things in there, orchestra or balcony, I'm going to assume that it says balcony. And what's that VLOOKUP going to look like? What's the only difference in the VLOOKUP I'm going to put here than the one I put there? I just wrote. Column. Instead of returning column 2, I'm going to return what? 3. Column 3. Okay, so VLOOKUP. Series, ticket, prices, comma 3, comma false, and end. So let's see. We are C, balcony, 150. Excellent, it worked. Let's just test it a little bit. Let's say it's A and orchestra. $225, perfect. Now, if we look at that, that was a biggie. Okay, that was one of the bigger formulas we've written so far. We'll talk about debugging formulas lately, but sometimes it's a matter of room. Sometimes it's a matter of room. One of the things we can also always do is up here in the formula bar, you can see the formula. But if you need more room, you can use the expand the formula bar, because sometimes these things get pretty big. They go into multiple pages, multiple lines. Okay, it depends how you design things. I always think it's best once it gets into that to use intermediate steps, but that's what we have at this point. Okay. You guys all get that to work? All right. So let's go forward here, and I got to collapse this so it's not taking up too much. Let's do handling. So this is going to be equal the handling cost. Number of decals is going to go here, so equal decals. And this price is going to be the number of decals times the parking fee. So equal decals times parking fee. Apparently some of these folks give a donation as well. So equal donation. The last thing I want to do is sum, so we have a total. I'm going to use my good friend AutoSum to sum J18 through J21, and I get $315 in this case. Okay. Alex.
Shouldn't the ticket cost be times the quantity?
Should be, yes. So let's go up to ticket cost. Let's expand it. At the very end, we'll put multiply by what's it called? Ticket quantity, there it is. Hit enter. Thank you. Now it's best practice that if you use define names that use them consistently throughout. You know, if you're going to design a spreadsheet, and this is how a professional would design a spreadsheet, that you should use them out throughout. Now you'll notice that in the beginning we just reference cells. For example, up here for subscriber, we put in equal B4. Okay, and for address we put in equal B5. Well, if I go up here, once again, to my formulas area, and I go up here to the define name button, there is an option that says apply names. Okay, and I want to, well, let's see, subscriber, address, what was the other one? Date. City, state, zip, and I click OK, you'll see it went in. Oh, maybe I have to highlight the whole area first. Yeah, that wasn't highlighted. So if I want to go into a portion of a spreadsheet and substitute the defined names in for cells wherever they're found, to make it more consistent, you apparently have to select that area of the spreadsheet, or the whole damn spreadsheet, I guess you could do. But I just selected my little invoice over here. And then I said define name, apply names, and then apply the names that I want to apply. So, you know what I mean? To substitute in the actual alias name rather than the B4 or the B5. Now we're still going to work with this. So this is the first kind of mini lecture of Module 8. So I want you to save what you have at this point, because this is where we're going to start back up on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we are going to use a macro to take, remember that transfer area on the bottom? We're going to use a macro to, we use a macro to print the invoice, and as we print the invoice, it's going to transfer that information, the important information that we want to keep indefinitely, over to this worksheet. So then we have a history of our sales. So each transaction results in an invoice, but then we also move that data over here into this ticket data so that we can see overall how many tickets we sold, what were the dates, all those good things. So it's almost kind of like a little database, if you will. But we use a macro to do that. All right, I'll show you that on Wednesday. So any questions on that little module that we just covered? Okay, so you have about only 10 minutes remaining.